Good morning everyone, and welcome to Day 1 Tombs of Amascut. The third raid is finally here and really early right now, but we're going to jump in, give it a try, and see if we can get a completion. So this is going to be my Day 1 impressions of the raid. Nothing too serious, but we're going to run through a couple Tombs of Amascut and see how it goes. So because this is our first time, we're going to go in with no invocations. Invocations will make the raid harder, but will also increase the loot potential. At a raid level of 0, you still have a reasonable chance of getting the untradable items, that being the partisan jewels and the thread of validness. Once you get a raid level of 50, you have a chance of getting the new Osmundton's Fang. And once you reach normal mode, or a raid level of 150 or higher, you have a chance of getting the rest of the uniques. But for now, we're going in with a raid level of 0. You know, no reason to make it any harder than it probably already is. Now, in the Tombs of Amascut, you have the choice of going down 4 different paths. You can take any of them in any order. So if you like one boss more, you could do it first, or save the best for last. Now, the first path we decided to try is Baba, the Guardian of Amascut. He's simply just a giant monkey. Now, before every boss fight, there is a pathway section that requires you to do a puzzle, defend a location, or run agility sepulcher style dodging. Now, for the path of Baba, you have to coordinate with your team, cool off some vents, and defend the center platform. Now, one thing that, well, we weren't aware of at this point is that one person is actually assigned Amascut's sight, and they are the ones that have to communicate with the rest of the team what needs to be done. But luckily, with a raid level of 0, we're pretty much able to just brute force our way through this without knowing any of the mechanics. So now you move on to the Demi boss fight, and Baba, for the most part, seems weak to melee. Baba has a few special attacks. The most notable and potentially dangerous one is when Baba rolls boulders down the chamber and can stun you against the wall, or at some points knock you into the pit and instantly kill you. Now luckily, because we're on entry mode, that doesn't happen, but you still take a ton of damage, and well, unsurprisingly I died. But on the plus side, you get to move around as this pretty cool ghost. So the next path we took was to Kefri, which is the giant dung beetle. Now the actual pathway here is pretty simple, and you don't really take too much damage doing it. It's pretty much just a bunch of different puzzles, some of them requiring you to do a bit of math, others requiring you to remember patterns, or just a straight up Simon Says game. It took a few minutes to figure it out, but for the most part, everything was pretty intuitive, and you didn't really take too much damage in this room. Now because we're doing this in entry mode with 0 invocations, this is going to be significantly easier than when you start powering everything up. But with that said, in entry mode, Kefri got absolutely melted and was killed in a pretty short amount of time. Now in the teasers, they said that this dungeon had a lot of poop in it, and they were pretty right. Now after you defeat your second boss and you leave the chamber, you'll notice a helpful spirit. Now they will provide you with a bunch of different resources and helpful things for the raids, such as stuff like Saradomin Brews, Super Restores, bandages which slowly heal you over time, stuff like overload potions. There's even a potion that restores your special attack quicker. There's quite a few things in here and a few items we've never seen before, and they're very powerful. Now from here we decided to take on the big crocodile. Now the path to Zebak requires you to collect water from the most inopportune spot in the world for some reason. It's behind this spike trap, poison trap, and just it's back there for some reason. So it's kind of like the Hallowed Sepulchre. You run through, and if you get hit on the way back, you drop some of your water. So the less damage you take on this, the quicker you can go through the room. Now the timing on everything is a bit chaotic, but often you can kind of click through it without taking any damage. So you kind of just finish the room eventually. Now the fight with Zebak is probably one of my favorites. There's just so many cool animations. You kind of have to run around the map a lot due to not only these poison blobs in the ground, but these giant waves will come out of the side as well. For the most part, we just used the Twisted Bow, which seemed to do a ton of damage to Zebak, and although it was a little bit close, we did manage to complete it. Now in this raid, as long as a single person survives and finishes the encounter, everyone respawns and everyone gets healed back to max health and prayer. So as long as one person survives, there's not much damage to your overall run. Now finally we went down the path of Akka, the Guardian of Het. Now the path is actually once again a puzzle room, and it's a light puzzle. It involves you reflecting light with mirrors, and you're also able to mine through some of the wall sections. Each puzzle is a little bit different, but essentially you can pick up the mirrors, put them down, reflect the light into the center, and it takes a little while to get the hang of it, but it's not too difficult. So the fight with Akka is probably one of the more challenging of the 4 bosses. There's a lot of mechanics to keep track of, they do a lot of damage, and you have to run around the map a lot. It feels kind of like a combination of the Great Olm and like the Nightmare as well. And once again, I planked on this one as well, but you know, we're learning. Now after you defeat all the 4 bosses, you can move on now to the final boss fight, which has been called the Wardens. Now there wasn't much information about it until their actual release, and I gotta say this fight, as well as pretty much everything in the raid, is just visually stunning. There's tons of new animations and variations of mechanics we haven't seen ever before in old school. Now this final boss fight has a ton of different mechanics, and each raid can be a little bit different because you get either one of the Wardens and they're killed in completely different ways. And because we're in entry mode, once again, I think we actually managed to skip some of the mechanics, but right away you're going to get this really cool disco light effect. But eventually our twisted bows carried us to our first completion. For reward, I got some potato cactus and a dragon med helm, so yeah, not bad. So with the completion under our belt, we decided to go back for another 0 invocation run just to try to get down the mechanics a bit better. And the second run through went a lot smoother. By the end, everyone had a ton of supplies, and we're able to cut off about half an hour from our raid time. Only took 45 minutes the second time, which wasn't so bad, and I was rewarded with a magic seed. Nice. So it was finally about time to start throwing on some of the invocations. Now here's where things get kind of interesting. Invocations make the raid more difficult. Now an invocation could limit the amount of times you can die, limit the amount of time you have to complete the raid, make certain mechanics stronger, put banana peels on the ground, stuff like that. Everything will make the raid more difficult, but on top of that, the higher your raid level goes, all of the enemies will get flat buffs to their hit points, defense, accuracy, and damage, which means no matter what you put on, everything will be much more loaded and dangerous on top of all the individual invocation mechanics. So with a raid level of 150, everyone's hit points is boosted by 60%, their defense is 60% higher, accuracy is 60% higher, so everything is much more difficult. Now the jump from 0 invocation to 150 was quite steep. Everything started taking a lot longer to kill, and everything did loads more damage. Now the Path of Het gave us a lot of trouble because Akka started doing tons of damage, and we're also doing it like 3rd or 4th, and by the time we got there, we just didn't have that many supplies left. But finally, after a few tries, we were able to make it through on a normal mode raid to the final boss with like 10 HP to spare. Now, as with everything else, the Wardens got much more difficult, and unfortunately a mechanic that I think we skipped in entry mode now was kind of a big deal, and that is this Orb of Death, which pretty much wiped us immediately. So that's all to say that there's quite a stark difficulty increase, and that's pretty well shown by looking at the amount of completions while we were doing this was only like 50. So not many people had done it, indicating that it was clearly pretty difficult. So from what I've tried so far, the Tombs of Amascut is one of the best pieces of content Jagex has ever released. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Not only is it visually stunning, the audio is great as always, the boss fights are quite unique, and there's tons of little quality of life mechanics that we've never seen before, such as all of your supplies from the raid going in this convenient pouch, which you can withdraw things from and put back in very smoothly. The boss fights are all very unique, and many of them have completely new mechanics or interactions that we've never really seen before. I really like that you get to take on the bosses in any order as well. It kind of adds another layer of strategy to the whole thing. The invocation system is a game changer. If you straight up had to go into this raid in normal mode, it would be very prohibitive for days until more information was released, but on day 1 with 0 invocations, it was quite doable, and I think this really will help make it more accessible for everyone. There's so much variety and options with the invocation system, and I really hope they use it for some future PVM content as well. There's obviously a lot of work that went into this raid, and I'm pretty confident I'm going to be grinding this for quite a while. Now, before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to March3258 and Pewter, who just joined the Dragon tier. joining the hybrid, Alejandra, and Kush Patel. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you to YoYoSub89, Carter, Mexos, and NDM001 for subscribing at the Runite tier. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.